Hi guys, hopefully you liked my video on the D3400. I know it was quite long, so this one I'm going to make a little bit shorter. This is my first review of one of the lenses I would recommend for beginners, and although this is quite a pricey lens, I'll explain why I still think this is extremely justified if you are a beginner, not interested in a particular niche specifically, not looking for a professional level type of type of camera, and something a little bit more general, why I think this lens would be the one I would go for if I was starting over again. The lens is the Nikon 18-300mm f 3.5-5.6 zoom lens from Nikon. You do get this as a 3.5 to 6.3, which will mean at the 300mm end it only opens up the aperture to 6.3, which will not allow as much light in and will make it more difficult to get a steady shot if you're shooting handheld, because you will need to either be in completely bright conditions or have a very steady arm in order to freeze the action. It won't make a huge difference, but I ended up plucking for the 5.6 just in case. Now, why would I recommend this lens for beginners, given it's so pricey? I picked this up for about £800. I think a lot of places have it for £900. I'll try and get a link to the £800 or £830, I think it was, in the description box below. I love this lens for one main reason, is when I'm out and about, if I'm just looking for if I'm out on a walk or whatever and I'm looking to get a few snaps, I don't need to change lenses. With this on, I have a focal range covered from quite a wide angle at 18mm all the way to quite a long reach with a 300. Means I can get an endless supply of different compositions put together, all with the one lens. For me, what really frustrated me, this is ironically the last lens I've actually bought, after having spent an absolute fortune on all my other lenses I've got, but I really wish I'd bought this one first, and then I probably wouldn't have invested in all the other ones I've got. For me, the biggest benefit of this is not having to change lenses when you're out on the street, walking around, if you're out on a hike, whatever it might be. You have so many options with this lens as to what you can take photos of, and changing lenses outside is a little bit of a hassle. You have to find somewhere to sit your camera down, get the cap onto the back of the lens that you've just taken off, take the cap off the lens you're about to put on, and get that into place in as quick a time as possible to limit the potential dirt or dust that could get onto your sensor. So I really like not having to change my lens over about. With this lens, there's a few things I do really like about it. It comes with VR, and it's got a normal mode or an active mode. Now, I've never used the active mode. The normal mode apparently gets you up to about 4.5 stops of value. I don't know if that's the right term, but basically it means the lens has vibration reduction, which means when you're clicking the shutter button, or if you're just holding it and it's moving around a little bit, this will help reduce the blur by stabilizing your shot by up to 4.5 stops. If you want a better explanation of that, go to an actual photographer, but basically it helps you get a sharper image without having to worry about the shutter speed being higher than the focal range, or much higher than the focal range that you're actually working with. The active mode, I've heard, is when you should use it if you are on the move yourself, as well as the subject that you're trying to take a photo of is also moving. So if there's movement at both the camera and the object that you're trying to shoot. Never had that myself. I tend to be always still when I'm taking my images so far. You can switch the VR off as well if you are using this on a tripod. I've heard it's recommended to switch the VR off in the lens. For me personally, I'll put up some of the images I've taken of this later on. I've never seen an issue, and some of them are taken from a tripod with the VR on. you've got a switch that controls your manual or autofocus, and what I love about the Nikkor lenses is even in the autofocus you do still have the option of manually overriding that with the focus ring that you have here. That does bring me on to a couple of the negatives, things I don't particularly like about this lens, although none of them are major. One of them is the weight. Now obviously for being able to cope with such a huge range, it is going to need to be a pretty heavy lens. It weighs in at just under 1 kilogram, and when you put that onto the body of your camera, it does make it quite front heavy, so you would need to support the lens and the camera together, one hand each, but most people will shoot like that anyway, so it's not a huge issue. Second issue I've got with this is it does come with a front and rear cap or hood, and also the hood that will prevent sun flare. The only thing I don't like about this hood is you can't really use the zoom range on it if the hood is in this fixed position, which is meant for portability, because the hood actually covers up most of the zoom ring itself. There is a little bit of room to get into it, but you can't use it that smoothly. So if you are looking to get a quick snap, you would have to take the lens hood off, either put it down somewhere or attach it onto the camera, take the cap off, and then you're in a position where you can then get your photo. Now by that point the photo might have gone. So I find myself not actually using this a lot. I'll leave it at home or in my bag, and I'll just carry it around like this on the camera, and that means if I'm wanting a quick shot, I've just got to quickly flick that off and I'm good to go. So I've never had an issue with any major flares when using this lens, so again it's a minor issue for me and not a huge problem. The other thing I really like about this is it does have a lock at 18mm, which means you won't get any lens creep, which is where the lens or zooms itself if you're carrying it around in your bag. It locks the lens in that 18mm position. Unlocking it is a simple switch, and then you've got this lovely little zoom here that extends the lens out to its maximum range of 300. So it does get quite big, obviously to be expected in a lens that can cater for this much, but a really smooth, crisp wee zoom in and out there. Love that feeling. Really impressed with the images that I've managed to get from this lens, and what I find now is that basically doesn't come off my camera unless I'm specifically looking for a particular shot. Now I'll flash some of the images that I've taken up on the screen just now with this camera. As I say, really impressed with it. Let's go for some that I took at, well in fact first of all let me show you the range here. So I've got these kettlebells in the corner of my room, and that's it at 18mm, and then zooming in to the full 300mm you can see the detail that I can reach from that seated position. Now these images aren't cropped at all, they are straight out of the camera, so you could even crop further than that and you would still retain a significant detail in your image. Moving on to some more landscape shots now. I've got this one of Stonehaven Beach, and this was taken at close to, I don't think it was quite at 18mm, but it was certainly closer to the wide end of the range. Allows you to get quite a lot in your field of view, and is still very sharp. This image was also shot on a tripod and with the VR on, but as you can see it's very sharp, and I'm quite happy with the image that was produced. Another one of Stonehaven beachfront, but this down on the actual beach itself, and again just a nice open range that you can get there. Moving on, another one down at the harbour there, and able to get a few buildings in as well as the whole road. Nice leading line round there. What I like about this lens as well is if you go into the full zoom, you will get a little bit of bokeh being produced, so you can get a little bit of that blurry background that you can see here. And yeah, the versatility of this is just superb. Some images of some of the sunsets we've had over Christmas as well, and I've even used it with an ND filter to then be able to get a nice bit of motion caught in the waterfall down at Croton there. And so yeah, really like this, purely because of how versatile it is. Just you're able to get so many different shots with the one lens, although it's pricey. And this is where you might be thinking, because as a beginner I don't want to invest that much in a lens, but what I found was I bought one of the 35mm prime quite early on. That was 150, 180, something like that. Then I wanted a wide angle lens so that I could get some of those nice images where you've got that thought of leading into an image, and I bought the 10 to 20mm, which is great, I love it, but it did mean I was changing over lenses. That was also about £300. I then bought the 70 to 300 zoom to cover right the way from 10mm up to 300, but again that was another £300. So by the time I bought the camera with the kit lens, as well as the 70 to 300 and the 10 to 20, I've got that 10 to 300 range covered, but I'd spent maybe 3, 6 and probably about 100, 150 extra for the kit lens with the body of the camera. So you're looking at about £800 already there, whereas I could have bought the body only and the 18 to 300 to cover that whole range in one lens, not have to change lenses out regularly, and only have spent the similar amount of money. So something to consider if you think this might develop into something that you are quite keen on as a hobby. Would it be better just to get the 18 to 300 straight off the bat? You can save a few £100 by getting the 18 to 300 that goes to 6.3 instead of the 5.6 aperture, the telephoto end, but I didn't want, my worry was, if I got that, would I then miss not having that extra stop of light at the telephoto end? So that's why I went for the 5.6 one. I'll link everything in the description below that I've mentioned in this video. If you found this useful as a beginner, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. Any questions, pop them down in the comments box below and I'll try and get back to you. Thanks for watching.